Some people think of description more along the lines of creative writing as opposed to essay writing. And because of that, some people are kind of afraid of it. There's, oh, I'm not creative, oh, I couldn't do that type of writing. But at the heart of it, description is simply giving sensory details. So think of the five senses: sight, smells, sounds, taste, textures, and just giving images or giving details using those five senses. And that's really the heart of what description is. It's not something to be afraid of. It's something that you can actually develop through practice. The description essay type, or the description pattern of development, has what's called a dominant impression. You can call it a thesis statement because at its heart it is a thesis statement, but also it's kind of better to look at it as a dominant impression that you're trying to create. You're trying to convey to your audience this dominant impression, whether you are describing a person, a place, a situation, any of the above. You're trying to give a dominant impression of that thing that you're describing. You want to select the details that you want to include. Be selective because you don't want to give your audience sensory overload, where you just give them too many details to process. I don't know if you've ever driven down the road and you noticed someone's house and there was just a gazillion things in their front yard. I'm not talking about just flowers and trees and stuff, but just think of all kinds of trinkets and things all in the yard that was just too much to take in. Sometimes we see this at Christmas, where there's this tiny little patch of yard with just billions, it seems, of Christmas decorations all on it. That is sensory overload. And if you give your audience too many details, it's going to be just too much for them to take in, and they're not going to really fully understand what it is you're trying to convey to them. So be selective in the details that you include. So, for example, if your dominant impression is you're trying to recreate for your audience a beach scene, and your dominant impression is of this tranquil, relaxing vacation on the beach that you spent, you're not going to include everything. You're going to be selective. You're going to include just the details that carry that impression forward. So if you're trying to show this peaceful, relaxing scene, you're probably not going to include the cigarette butts that littered the beach area, because that doesn't convey or help you to convey that dominant impression of a tranquil, relaxing scene. Also, it can be helpful when you're trying to think about what details to include to just make a list. Make a list using each of the five senses. So you start with sights, and you make a list of all the sights. Then you move on to the next sense, sounds. What were all the sounds that you can remember? And then do that with each of the five senses. Just make a list of everything. And then after you've made the list, go through and scratch off things that don't lead to that dominant impression. Put a check mark by the things that definitely do. And then gradually kind of weed through that list until you find just the right details that help you to convey that impression. That's one generally quick and easy way to kind of develop those details and to limit to just those select ones that you wish to describe. Now, for your organizing this type of essay, you can use any even a combination of the organizational approaches that we've already discussed: the chronological, the spatial, the emphatic, and the familiar to less familiar, or the complex or less complex to more complex. And there's a fifth type of organizational approach that you can use for this type of essay, and that is organizing by sensory image. So you can discuss all of the sights first, and then next move on to all of the smells, and then next all the sounds, and then you keep going, and you organize by each of those sensory images. That's kind of an easy way, and sometimes a good effective way of organizing this type of essay as well.